Hello everyone, welcome back to the Christ MotoGP YouTube channel, and today we're here to discuss Ducati. Now, we have often talked about how they're going to be able to manage Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia in 2025 and beyond. Well, we're here to talk about stuff that's happened in the past. As you can see, I'm joined by Lewis Duncan as well. And Lewis, this is maybe the first time in their MotoGP era that they've had two massive names. The stats speak for themselves. Statistically, they're the two best in MotoGP at the moment. It's going to be a fun and interesting watch looking on, isn't it, for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all on tenterhooks waiting to see this getting underway. We obviously saw flashpoints between Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez last year. We think Portugal and the clash, and then the subsequent kind of media reaction there was between the two of them, and then obviously Jerez race. From that point on, it kind of cooled off a bit, and as Marquez signed his contract, there did seem like a very concerted effort from him to kind of keep the peace.
Yeah.
When there was things like the Rossi comments coming out and stuff like that, he was very, very cordial about it. And to his credit, so was Pecco as well. He moved to make sure he wasn't really caught in the middle of it and stepped aside and was like, look, nothing to do with me. He's my teammate. The two of them have had a good relationship since things have been fine since, through the Ducati launch. But listen, these two riders will fall out at some point. It is inevitable. They are the two best riders in MotoGP. Well, we're two of the four or five best riders in MotoGP right now on the best bike.
Mm-hmm.
The expectation is to win the championship from both of them, and that's going to lead to tension. We've seen it time and time again over the years. You think Rossi and Lorenzo at Yamaha, there will always be rivalries when you have two absolute studs on the best machinery expected to fight for the championship. Ducati, like you say, it's a real kind of U-turn for them in terms of their policy for a long, long time. Obviously, Pecco is a homegrown rider in terms of he's come through that kind of farm system, let's say, from Ducati, but obviously Marc's an outsider. We know that when the first talks with Gresini came about in 2023, he wasn't really all that welcomed by Ducati. The fact that he raced for Gresini was obviously Ducati allowed that to happen eventually, but he wasn't keen. And I remember a few years ago Andrea Dovizioso saying that there was talks about that Ducati should get Marquez, and Delignio shut it down internally and said we don't need him. So this does represent a real change, and because of that, I think we are probably going to see that kind of fallout, because before then you think Pecco and his teammates. So who did he have before? Okay, Jack Miller, they came up through Pramac and they were friends. He had Bastianini. That wasn't really a tense relationship because they've never really got on terms very much. You look at the Dovi and Petrucci again, not really.
Yeah.
Not really anything there to cause tension. So Ducati hasn't had to manage a needly situation like this before, and it sure is going to be a real test of their management skills, which, as we have discussed before, over the years has failed them a bit.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up. And you talk about Dovi. I mean, there's that famous sort of falling out with Gigi Dall'Igna. I know you covered it well in your previous role at Autosport. It was a good sit-down interview there where Dovi kind of explained, in that prime of maybe his fights with Marquez, him and Gigi really didn't see eye to eye, and the relationship really just kind of went sour at the end of Dovi's time with Ducati, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the Dovi thing is an interesting kind of let's call it a warning for Ducati, because the problem there was Dovi and Gigi, really big egos, and generally when those big egos clash, there is a falling out, and that's, you don't get egos much bigger than Marc Marquez is, and he's earned that. He's an 8-time world champion, but that will be could be an issue as well. So the Ducati thing is an interesting one. We've seen it with Casey Stoner as well, twice. The first time, when he had take his first leave of absence because of illness, and he then later wrote in his book that Ducati CEO Claudio Domenicali called him and said, I hope you don't plan on getting paid for the time you've been off.
Yeah, brutal.
Yeah, and then when
So it is.
the time came for Ducati to put its hand in its pockets and really, show him some faith after what he'd done for them, they wouldn't do it. While at the same time they were chasing Jorge Lorenzo with a big money offer at the time. So then obviously Stoner left to Honda, and we know what happened there. You think into the test and stuff as well, where Stoner felt pretty kind of given the cold shoulder there because he didn't feel like he was being utilised. So again, they lost Casey Stoner as a test rider. So Ducati have famously at times really dropped the ball, and this will be a really, really major test for them in terms of if you drop the ball on this one, you're threatening to lose one of two of the best riders ever in the class, and certainly in this era.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the last time you think about that in terms of losing a rider at the wrong time, like Jorge Lorenzo, whenever he left, didn't get on in 2017 with the bike at all. It was didn't feel comfortable, but there was still flashes there in certain races. I think back to Mazzano when he was leading in the wet and he crashed out, and he knew he had something on the Ducati, but he always kept saying publicly, "It's not comfortable yet." Ducati tried everything in 2018, and then it clicked. One was at that Jello race where they literally strapped a load of, what was it, like, sort of, how can I say, like
the ergonomic changes
on the tank and stuff, and then Lorenzo was back to Jorge Lorenzo on a Yamaha essentially, and he'd already left for Honda then, and that was the ironic thing. He had looked like the Lorenzo that they thought they were going to get, and the management kind of just pulled the trigger and went, well, he's not our guy anymore. And look how that kind of went, because he was in 18, injury of course got in the way, but he was so fast still when I think about it. And you think, what would have happened if he had stayed on? That sort of thing plays into it as well, doesn't it, with the management?
Yeah, 100%. The Lorenzo situation was another kind of instance of Ducati management not really playing the game very well, because they made a snap decision really, to get rid of him at the point when he finally came good, and a lot of that came back to the fact that they'd obviously paid quite a lot of money to get Lorenzo out of his get him out of Yamaha's hands. And then Dovi turned out to be the rider who went on to be fighting for the championship, and obviously Dovi cost a tenth of whatever Lorenzo was on at the time. So that kind of warped perception, but that that is an important factor as well, is that it's not necessarily an overnight thing. We kind of saw that with Enea Bastianini as well. He had that first injury hit season, but already it was kind of looking like they were already looking beyond him for 2024. Had Jorge Martin won the championship in 2023, he had a contract clause that said he was going to get promoted for 2024. So, Ducati does have a bit of a history of kind of putting riders on bikes and not really even giving them a fair chance from the off. So you'd like to think with Pecco and Marc, they're going to obviously, give it a bit of time. But next, 2026 will be a contract year for both of them. They're going to be free agents for 2027. There are some manufacturers out there on the ascendancy that will be looking for bigger talent to try and bolster their ranks, and one of Marco or Pecco, depending on what happens, will be very, very happy to look at offers from elsewhere if the offer's right. And so that's the thing that Ducati has to manage, because then if you look at behind it, it's roster behind that. If they go back to, okay, we'll promote internally, who have you got?
It's the weakest they've been, I'd say, in 5+ years.
Easily, Fabio Di Giannantonio's done a great job, but is he factory material yet? Well, we're going to find out this year. Fermin Aldegué has probably been promoted too early, and then Alex Marquez, and Franco Morbidelli are good midfield runners and can probably get on the podium and win the odd race on the right day, but can they lead a factory? I don't think so. So, this is a really interesting kind of managerial test for Ducati. It's also a good test of Gigi Dall'Igna's ego, because if Marquez starts winning on that bike, at what point does the conversation turn towards, well, it's the rider, not the bike?
Yeah, exactly.
Gigi's a proud technician, and if that happens, does there come a point where Gigi thinks, well, I'm going to go elsewhere and prove that it's me. It's me and my bike is the one that's created the winners. We know there were conversations with Honda last year.
That's right.
There's a lot of this, I think the way to look at 2025 and 2026 is it's a game of Jenga, really, and the wrong block comes out and the whole tower is going to fall down, and that's the risky run when you put someone like Marc Marquez in your team.
How do you think they would want the seasons to go in terms of a team rivalry? So say it's Pecco versus Marc and they can't be separated all season. Or do you think they'd prefer someone to be 75 points clear of the other and it's easier to manage that way? But then you run the risk of maybe, like you said previously, losing someone to someone else if they're not happy in that environment. It's a balance, isn't it?
I think definitely the latter. If you've got either Marc or Pecco is clear in the distance, then it becomes easier to manage the situation because the focus is then on the other one to be doing a better job. But also, certainly if you look at it from maybe the perspective that it's Marquez is the one in front and Pecco's the one behind, it becomes a lot easier to then keep Pecco around. And because if your stock drops like that, then the opportunities to go elsewhere in the grid diminish a little bit. So then you're kind of stuck with the opportunity to go somewhere lesser or stay with what you've got and just sort of accept that either, you might be able to fight for the championship, but really, for as long as you have the teammate that you do, it's not going to happen. I think that won't happen. I think probably the former will be the true thing of it will probably be quite close between them all year, and we will see a lot of flashpoints, which is kind of great for us, really. We want things to write about. The fans want things to talk about and watch and reasons to tune in every week. So let's see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think on that point of having an all expectation for what's going to happen, I hope it delivers, because even in that little interview that they've done, was it Tuesday, on the slopes in Italy, it was quite cordial between them both. But what did you make of that little comment from Bagnaia about Portimao, where he says, well, if I had stayed on, I would have got 11 points, would have won the World Championship in 24. And Marquez jokingly was laughing and he said sorry about that sort of thing. What do you make of that? That was it shows where Bagnaia's thinking still. Even he's talked about it, hasn't he, about 2024. It still plays on his mind where he could have got points or he had made a mistake. Interesting, that little point, wasn't it?
Yeah, obviously Pecco was blamed for that by Marc. I mean, really, I think if anyone has to take the blame for it, it was Pecco, and the same goes for some of the other key incidents that have cost him big points. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of gamesmanship there, but Marquez doesn't care. It's not going to rattle him one way or the other. If anything, maybe it was the wrong thing for Pecco to say, because it's kind of maybe just opened up that little possibility that perhaps there's a weakness there to exploit. If Pecco's too much thinking about, well, I can't make mistakes, and Marc's in a position to press him, that's a situation where you end up coming off second best. So I think Pecco might have just unwittingly revealed just a very small weakness with that answer.
Yeah, and you just, like I say, don't want to give Marc Marquez an advantage. You can't be giving him an edge. I mean, he doesn't really need it, to be honest, because he's so highly wired anyway in how he thinks. And if he senses danger, and like a shark almost, he can just sniff it out and he'll go for it. I can't wait to see the dynamic between the two. I hope it doesn't fall apart straight away, sort of thing, because I want to see them both really go at it with each other and be respectful, because they have said they're not going to back down. They said in an interview that they're not going to really change how they race each other, even though they're in the same colours, same team. So I think that's promising for us fans and the world watching on if we get a Titanic scrap. But yeah, Ducati management, let's see if they can avoid the mistakes of the past. Really key to see who is the one pulling strings there and who's going to try and manage things, because there's a lot of big egos, as you say, and when you have a big ego like Marc Marquez, Pecco Bagnaia has a big ego because it's his team. He's won World Championships there. He feels like it's his. Management, Gigi, Tardozzi. Yeah, it's pretty tasty, I think, for 2025 and beyond. So if you enjoyed the video, let us know what you think in the comments. How do you think the relationship is going to go with Ducati, Marquez, Bagnaia? How's that going to pan out? Subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. Like the video, helps us out massively. And we'll see you next time for another one. Take care.